Hi guys, welcome to this edition of ArmCareIQ. I just wanted to go through a particular conference proceeding that I just gave last week at the International Society of Biomechanics. It's a huge biomechanics convention with tons of movement scientists, and it's really was an honor and very grateful to present. The title of it is Functional Forearm Fatigue Response to Changing Stride Length in Baseball Pitchers, and I performed this research with an outstanding professor at Deauville College named Dan Ramsey, and he was my PhD advisor at the University of Buffalo, and we still continue to do research today. And it's important because we want to look at how to prevent injuries, how to maximize performance in baseball. So before we begin, you got to understand a little bit about the role of the musculature of the forearm. So in the one picture, you can see as the arm's laid back, there's all these muscles that overlay the medial elbow joint or the inner elbow, where you have this bump. And I blew it up so it shows that there are a bunch of muscles that overlay the ligament. The ligament's actually underneath all of these, and it's the flexor pronator mass muscles. And they help to compress the inner elbow when it's laying back, because there's this big bending moment when the arms move back and your upper arm starts to rotate forward. So it's kind of these opposite reactions, and we call that inertia, where the weight of the forearm is actually going the opposite direction, and it's opening up the joint. But you can see with the hand model, you can see the top layer of muscles that make up this flexor pronator mass. And so you have the flexi-carpi ulnaris, that muscle runs on the inside all the way around the pinky finger, then the palmaris longus, the flexor carpi radialis. And then you have the pronator teres. So the pronator teres turns the hand over, okay? But the most important muscle that has been shown in research to close the inner elbow, so to reduce the joint spacing between the bones, is the flexor digitorum superficialis, which we're showing here. It's really between these two fingers and the thumb has shown the greatest effect on stabilizing the elbow or closing that medial joint component. And it also is a wrist flexor. So it has multi-purposes and it's a deep layer muscle. So let's get to the experimental problem. So I've been looking at a common shared sheet that shows all of the Tommy John surgeries that have happened to professional players. And sometimes there's college players as well. And when they've had Tommy John surgery. In the 1970s, there were only two, and Tommy John was one of them. So they coined the surgery after them. But you can see in each decade, there's this exponential rise where, right now it is an explosive issue that I feel has a real component of associated strength. So my research, I was looking at mechanical compensations, and I was interested in stride length compensation. What happens if stride length changes in an athlete, whether they fatigue or they have mobility restrictions between their hips, or a change in mound surface? What could happen to the delivery? And I found there were changes in physiologic fatigue. So hormone levels changed, blood values, the analytes that I looked in blood, like cortisol, lactic acid, those things changed a little bit, and heart rate response. And then the timings when stride length changes also gets affected. We also saw that stride length changes the shear forcing, so how much the athlete pushes behind them to move forward or in front of them to brace with longer strides. And then there was this compensation where the linear momentum going towards the home plate, if it was less with a shorter stride, the pitcher would actually make up with greater angular momentum or rotational momentum in the transverse plane. And that plane's, if you're looking down on the athlete and you're watching them rotate, all the momentum of all those mass segments, they increase. And that causes a little bit of a disconnect with the arm and can cause it to leg back. And again, that can open up the middle elbow. The cool thing about all this research that we had done with stride length is that although we changed the stride a lot, there was no change in ball velocity performance. So, the purpose of it was we wanted to see what changes in stride, what they would do to grip strength. But we did not measure the flexor digitorum superficialis grip between these two fingers and thumb. We did full hand grip testing with the hand grip dynamometer. We hypothesized that the shorter strides, they were going to increase fatigue of the forearm. There's going to be something that's mechanically inefficient about it. So this is basically the lab. We had college pitchers come in, and they threw in this capture environment. You're gonna see all these cameras, and we had markers on the body where they could find these segments in 3D space. We had radar gun, and which is essential to get the outcomes. And to identify stride length, what we did is when the athlete got to peak knee height, we marked where the calcaneus or the heel bone, where it was in 3D space. And then as the athlete starts descending down the mound, we identify stride foot contact when it recorded 5% of body weight on the force plate. And a lot of data in biomechanics, they're looking at velocities essentially to understand stride foot contact, but we actually had the real force of where this happens. So that's just a computer generated image of the delivery. So let's get to the conclusions and results. You guys have been waiting for it. So with the understride, we were right. Our hypothesis was right that there is going to be some effect on fatigue with the understride or the shortened stride deliveries. And what we found is it was almost 2 kilograms. So it was all over 4 pounds, which can be clinically significant. Like essentially, you don't want to have any strength loss. And in a small percentage of the athletes that we tested, there's actually a strength gain post-game from our pre-test grip strength scores. So some of them got potentiated. We're going to talk about potentiation in later editions of ArmCareIQ, but they got activated to have a stronger squeeze. So, in conclusion, we need to have a little bit better way of understanding efficient mechanics, and particularly stride length optimization, which could set up the entire kinetic chain of the delivery. So, utilizing fatigue-based measures that are functional would allow us to understand is the pitcher efficient enough, and using strength as a guiding principle. And just to get into efficiency, you're looking at velocity efficiency. This is one definition of how fast can you throw at the lowest levels of elbow and shoulder load. Energy efficiency, how fast can you throw at the least amount of energy that needs to be generated. But we're looking at mechanical efficiency. So when to make a mechanical adjustment by looking at post-game strength changes. And this is what we're doing with ArmCare, and accuracy. And eventually we're going to be able to track accuracy in our app. And what we want to find is that athletes get into this quadrant. So these multifactorial decision-making matrices will be together. And you can see, this athlete has a high degree of strength and a high degree of accuracy. And this is where you want to be. This is where you know that you're mechanically efficient. And all the other boxes, you may be wanting to look into mechanical changes or a workload change in terms of pitch counts. So if you like what you've heard, I'd like you guys to hit the subscribe button on YouTube and like us. It helps our company, and we really appreciate you listening. Thank you.